What is good, everybody? Welcome to the OG Gold Standard Podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. It's Thursday, so you know who's with me, the human wet blanket, Levin Black. What's up, Levin?
You going back to using that on every introduction now, or what?
Well, with the shoe fits.
I don't think it's fit much lately, but that's just the way it's been. It's not anything personal.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going around. Please rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Like and subscribe to the Gold Standard YouTube channel. Going to get into a few things today. Of course, we're going to talk about Trey Lance and the quarterbacks. Yes, we are. It's the biggest storyline with the 49ers. We can talk about some of the other stuff in the game coming up this weekend, and we will. But the quarterback stuff, it's kind of a big deal. I'm just going to say that. And it continues to churn. There's always a new development in the story, Levin, and let's just dive right into it right now. I was a little disappointed in Kyle Shanahan yesterday when he was specifically asked by Jack Hammer, and shout out Jack Hammer for asking this question, if he had a response, if Kyle had a response to the criticism that Trey has taken, specifically Michael Lombardi saying that when Trey's mama picked him up out of the crib, he didn't have quarterback instincts. And Kyle Shanahan said, basically, it comes with the territory. He didn't defend Trey Lance. He didn't say that was a dumb take. He said, basically, it comes with the territory. I thought that was a little screwed up. I'm not going to lie.
I'm going to say it right here, what I said on Twitter. I don't think Kyle Shanahan gives two fucks what's going on with Trey Lance. He is out. He is all the way out. I don't think he cares about Trey Lance's development anymore. I think he thinks Sam Darnold is better, and I think he thinks that Brock Purdy is this, godsend 1 in a million lottery ticket that they hit in the 7th round. And I think he's all in on Brock Purdy, and if something happens to Brock Purdy, he feels more confident in Sam Darnold, and so he does not care whatsoever about people criticizing Trey Lance, about what's said, whether it crosses a line or any of that. He doesn't care about Trey Lance's feelings. To me, it confirms what has been rumored all offseason, that Kyle Shanahan is out on Trey Lance, and I think it's become pretty clear.
We have seen this team go to the mattresses for Jimmy Garoppolo. Kyle has talked about the criticism of Jimmy Garoppolo. All the players have talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. When they want to defend someone, they do. They went to the mattresses for Javon Kinlaw when he got into the thing with Grant Cohn. Again, if they want to defend someone, they do. And so far, the only person, well, there's two people actually, but the only player that's defended Trey Lance is a guy that's not even on the damn team anymore, and that's Raheem Mostert. And if you didn't see what Raheem Mostert said, I'll see if I can pull it up quickly. And credit to him. I mean, he played one game with Trey Lance, and then he got hurt, and that was the end of that. But I give him credit for actually speaking up and coming to Trey's defense. Let's see. Why do I always click the wrong link here? I'm trying to be all smooth, and I can never do it.
Smooth and you do not go together. Come on now.
Shut up, Richard. Raheem said, hey, man, y'all need to stop disrespecting Trey Lance like this. This is crossing the damn line. Everyone has something to say, but can't back up their own BS. Good on Raheem Mostert. Where's everybody else? Where's George? Where's IU? Where's Debo? Where's Armstead? Bosa? Well, Bosa's not in camp, but any of these dudes, any of them. Kyle Juszczyk said Lance is beloved in the locker room. Then why are they letting the vultures just pick at this guy?
Yeah, I mean, actions speak louder than words, right? So far, what they say publicly is, oh, no, we love Trey. We got nothing against him. But their actions are trumping that by showing they do not care. They're not in on Trey Lance. Trey Lance is not one of the boys. He's not part of that fraternity. He's out. Brock Purdy is. And there is an area I'm not quite willing to go yet on it, but it is alarming how quick Brock Purdy got into that boys club, and Trey Lance has not been able to. Now, I don't think Brock Purdy was ever hey, that's the guy here to replace Jimmy, even though that's kind of what's happened. So that might be a big part of it, is that they all saw Trey as that's the guy that they're bringing in to replace our guy. And Brock was just kind of like, he saved our bacon after Jimmy went down. Not the same situation. So that might be part of it. But I do question, why is Trey not part of the group? And Brock Purdy was, initiated right away the moment he became a starter.
Because I think the emotional attachment to Brock for saving the season has quickly ingratiated him with that locker room, because they all thought it was going to be a wasted year when everybody went down. And the fact that it wasn't, to me, I think kind of like super sped up that credibility in the locker room.
That is possible.
Just say you're right. Just say it. We all know. You can admit it. It's fine.
I think that plays a role, but I don't think that's all of it. There is something inherent, and I think it's because in Brock Purdy, they can see themselves. They see a similar background. He has similar interests and a life that they can relate to. I don't think Trey Lance has the same. I think Trey Lance's interests outside of football probably don't align to the good old boys that exist with the 49ers.
And I wanted to address this because I disagree with this sentiment. And Akash isn't the only one that said it, but he's the tweet that I saw that I responded to. But it isn't about him specifically. It's about what he's talking about. Akash said, imagine thinking Kyle Shanahan cares about what person X is saying on First Take or Undisputed. Can't believe he was asked about it. It's not his responsibility or the team's responsibility to respond or give credence to what anyone's saying outside of the building. Yes, it is, Akash. It absolutely is. If you give a crap about that player, and you're not like the idea that, well, if you comment on it, you give it credence. These are coming from national reporters and analysts. There's no further elevation that you give something if you comment on it. It's already a national story. It's already a national comment. Like, so that idea I disagree with, but it has to do with your relationship with the players, because the players see this stuff. They do, whether they scroll on social media themselves or whether someone sends it to them, and people send them stuff all the time. George Kittle told me his mother sends him negative stuff. Trey Lance himself told me in an interview that you can go on YouTube and watch that sometimes people send him stuff. So they see this stuff. So let's not act like they're immune to it. They absolutely see it, even if they publicly deny it. Okay. And so when your team doesn't respond to this stuff, it sends a message, and it could send a good message if you see your coach saying, hey, this is bogus. These people are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. That sends a positive message. And what have we been saying about Trey Lance? That has a confidence issue. It's a crisis of confidence, right? Well, how about giving your guy some confidence and getting people to back off a little bit? What is the harm in that? It's zero risk, all reward, and yet the 49ers won't do it. So I agree with what you said. It shows that they are out.
I mean, I responded to that tweet and I said, why do they have a PR department then? And the PR department is not small and is not unimportant. Like I worked for an NBA franchise as an intern. That PR department has as much say and pull within a front office as any department other than the top execs. They control the narrative that is out there. They control what the team is showing publicly. They are very important. And I'm sick of, I'm going to be honest here, I'm sick of some of the content creators constantly going to bat for the team and just playing cheerleader. Be honest. Don't play cheerleader. Take every situation for what it is as best as you can. Yes, sometimes things cross a line and the team needs to respond. You're going to argue maybe Kyle Shanahan doesn't need to, but the team does. There needs to be somebody from the team that puts something out, whether it's just the 49ers, Jed York, John Lynch, or Kyle Shanahan. Somebody high up needs to come forward and say, hey, that crosses the line. You don't talk about people's mother, because that did cross a line.
It was just such a bizarre.
And they respond to so many things that are less than that. And that's what bothers me. And that's the truth of the matter. The team has responded to things that are less critical than that didn't invoke the player's family. And yet they're not responding to this. So let's call it what it is and not play cheerleader.
The Lombardi thing was just so bizarre. Just from everything about it, like, one, babies don't have quarterback instinct. Like, what are we talking about? And just the fact that he was like, his mama picked him up from the crib. Like, there was undertones there that I didn't.
The mama part, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was really, really weird. And I thought it did cross a line. And I thought somebody should have said something about it. But there was somebody who said something about Trey Lance, who did defend Trey Lance. And that was somebody that I think is in a unique position and really can relate to what Trey Lance is going through. And that's your boy, Levin, Steve Young, who was on KNBR and I thought offered the perfect defense of Lance. And everybody was saying, oh, he can't process it and all this stuff. Listen to Steve Young on KNBR defending Trey Lance.
I don't know that it's that he's not seeing it. I think what's happened is he's now squeezed where every throw is a referendum on whether he's any good or not. Yeah. Because he doesn't have a lot of college or even pro, money in the bank, not literal money, but just the ability to kind of go out and play and show people what I could do. And so there's all this expectation and aspiration and fear and anxiety. And every time I go out for a series, something great's got to happen. And all of a sudden, you're not free, you're not relaxed, you're pressing, and you're pressing every throw. And all of a sudden you're late for a throw, and then you get sacked and you go down. And you're like, holy crap, how many bad things can happen? So you get into a bad spot. He's competent, but now Trey's in a spot where he has to go out every practice and try to prove that he's worth hanging in there with. And that's a tough spot to be in.
I completely agree. Every time Trey Lance plays, he's got to throw an 80-yard touchdown pass. And I think it is affecting him, and I think it would affect anybody.
See, this gets into the biggest theoretical in sports history that fascinates me. How much of a quarterback succeeding is being in the right place to where they can build up until the point that they know they can do it, and how many quarterbacks out there could have been these great, multiple Pro Bowlers, maybe even Hall of Fame quarterbacks, but the circumstances they went into destroyed their confidence. And how much of it is, if you're actually a Hall of Fame quarterback, you'll overcome that, right? That's a theoretical that can never be answered. We don't know. And that's where we're at with Trey Lance. So I can't say for certain that Steve Young is right or wrong on that, because that's the theoretical that is unanswerable to me. That's always fascinated me since I was a kid. How much of it is a quarterback failed because of their circumstances, and then even when they went and got a second chance, they were still affected by all the psychological things that worked in, and that they were slower to process because they didn't trust things because of the situation they were. It's, when you have trust issues with one team and you go to a second team, you can't necessarily just instantly get past those trust issues. And I think we see that a lot with quarterbacks. Now, Trey Lance isn't on his second team, but it certainly seems clear that he's going to need a second team to have that chance. Is it that Trey Lance just isn't good enough, that he doesn't trust and he has trust issues that are inherent to him, and he's unable to overcome those and trust the system, which we know Kyle Shanahan wants? Or is it the circumstances that Trey Lance had destroyed his confidence because he came into a situation where he was put in as the prized number 3 overall pick that they traded 3 first-round picks for, but we're not giving you the reins because we have this other guy that's super beloved and we're keeping him in the locker room, so you can't become the leader. You can't instantly have this confidence and show it and show out. And so now you had to sit and kind of bring yourself down so you're not stepping on the guy's toes that's actually playing as a rookie. And now that he's gone, you're trying to come back to what you were, but you're human and you can't get there. How much of is what? I don't know. And that's the truth of the matter. I don't think anybody can know.
They put him on the council, but they did not grant him the rank of master. That sort of summarizes the
No, they didn't even put him on the council. They said stay in the Padawan room and protect those little Padawans. Stay in there. You don't get to have any say.
Let me just say that didn't work out for the Padawan.
Now, here's the scenario. If we want to make a Star Wars reference, it was Kyle Shanahan, which is Yoda, saying, yes, you get to be in the room, but you don't get to say anything. And the whole rest of the council, which would be the veterans, saying, no, that guy can't be in here because he's not going to undermine the guy that we actually love, so he needs to go to the Padawan room. That's the scenario.
I don't like this idea that, well, if Trey Lance really was the guy, then he would overcome all of this. Like, these aren't robots, man. And also, he's not really getting the opportunity to overcome all of this, right? Like, again,
but some quarterbacks do. Some quarterbacks have, unwavering confidence, and they're still going to make the dang throws. Now, that confidence might screw them, and they make too many of the throws, and they end up getting interceptions. But somebody like Baker Mayfield, you're never taking his confidence away from him. Baker Mayfield's never going to have a confidence issue because of who he is.
And guess
what? The problem for him is he goes too far with it, and he gets to the point of not being confident but being cocky, or a gunslinger. We've seen quarterbacks out there that they want to have this gunslinger mentality, and yet they don't truly have the skill to be that. Somebody like Jay Cutler, constantly made throws that he shouldn't make because he thought he could be Brett Favre.
Again, Trey Lance is younger than 9 current rookies on the 49ers. So, like, if his confidence is a little shaken, I think it's understandable considering the team has never shown any confidence in him, ever. They never have. They never gave him the starting job out of the chute in 2021, and they brought back his biggest threat in Jimmy Garoppolo less than 2 weeks before the season started. So, to me, it's hard to say Trey Lance should just be confident no matter what, when every single message that he has gotten from the team has chipped away at that confidence. Quana, thank you much for the super chat. 2024, Lance is at the podium for a different team. He's asked about his new team, and Lance says, it's just good to be somewhere I'm wanted. That's a very, very realistic
That's a bet I would be willing to make. Something like that will probably come out of his mouth whenever he does move on to a different team, whether or not that's a trade or just his contract expires at the end of next year.
Let's spin it forward a little bit because it's Thursday now. We've got another game coming up. What does Trey Lance have to do to give you confidence in him? Because I know you told me before we went on the air that your feeling on Trey has kind of changed a little bit. Michelle Majuk told us after the game on Sunday she's out on Trey Lance. So first of all, let's talk about that, and then I guess we can spin it forward to the game on Sunday. Tell us how your opinion has changed on Trey.
So it's not that I'm out on Trey. I don't go far as Michelle does. It's that, before I preferred Trey Lance to get an opportunity, and if it doesn't work out, go back to Brock. Now that is flipped. 100% Brock deserves the opportunity because what I saw from Trey Lance is that he hasn't progressed at all from being a rookie. He's making the same mistakes, and you can say, well, he hasn't really gotten to play. There are quarterbacks that improve, and that's the part I disagree with you, and Jason said it specifically on Tuesday, that you can't improve unless you play. Yes, you can. There are plenty of quarterbacks that were backups that learned things from being in an NFL situation that then were better. You can't become a finished product. You can't be fully polished, but you can learn things. You're telling me somebody like Tom Brady didn't improve from being a backup for a year? You're telling me
how do you know
that Aaron Rodgers didn't improve from being a backup and, by the way, changing his throwing mechanics didn't take him 3 years? You're telling me that somebody that's currently the quarterback in Green Bay, I know what he did as a rookie because I have a buddy that's a beat reporter for Green Bay, and he looked terrible as a rookie, but now in this camp, he's looking like a polished starter. It is 100% true. You can improve as a backup, and it even goes so far. You can say, I know what the response is going to be. Well, Trey Lance barely has had any throws, so he needs tons of experience. How about Matt Castle? He had 33 throws in his college career. He sat behind Tom Brady, came in, and had a really good first year. He had 3,700 yards that year and 10 more touchdowns and interceptions, and then a couple of years later had a Pro Bowl year in Kansas City. He barely played in college, and he didn't get almost any pass attempts backing up Tom Brady because Tom Brady hates to come out. He improved. You can't tell me that what you saw when he went 10-5 as a starter and threw for 3,700 yards is what he would have done as a rookie.
How do you
can
know?
Improve.
How?
Because rookies don't do that. There's literally a handful of rookies in the history of the NFL that have ever been able to do that. Now, you do need to play for certain things, but in my opinion, trusting the system is not one of them, and that's the problem that I saw with Trey Lance. I'm sure you saw the breakdown that JT O'Sullivan did on his YouTube channel.
Yes, I did.
Trey Lance had those comebacks, right? He had the comeback, but he didn't trust the timing. He wanted to see it open first, and by the time you see it open, it's too late on a comeback, and everybody knows that from the little league level. If you see it open, it's too late. So why isn't he trusting the system? Trust the system. If it doesn't work, what do we know that Kyle Shanahan has said? If you trusted the system and the system failed you, that's not on you. That's on him, meaning Kyle Shanahan. Why can't he trust the system in year 3? Why can Brock Purdy trust it as a rookie right away?
Because Trey Lance has always been on a tightrope with no safety net from the second he got to the 49ers because there was always consequences.
But is this mentality working for him or is it hurting him more? Trust the system. Take your mind out of it and just trust the system.
Hold on. So that two separate things, because I agree with you. I think when he plays this weekend, and we'll talk about that, he needs to just let it rip and say, screw it, because what I'm doing now isn't working. But let me go back. There's always been consequences for every single one of his failures. Because in 2021, he was competing with Jimmy G. And in 2022, like I said, they brought Jimmy Garoppolo back. So he's never been able to have the freedom to fail, ever. He's never been able to just say, screw it. This doesn't look good, but I'm going to trust the system and throw it. And if it gets picked, I'm not going to get pulled or I'm not going to lose my chance to be the starter. He's never had the chance to do that. So that's why I think he doesn't trust it. And he doesn't know what NFL Open is yet. Because again, he's only played in 4 games. He needs to learn that. That's a huge adjustment from North Dakota State. So when he sees it, he's like, oh, that guy's open. Because he's used to seeing guys wide ass open. So I think that's where we are with him. That's why I think he's not throwing it. And I don't think that gets better by sitting on the bench. I think he has to see, okay, this is what I saw in the game, then study the film and say, okay, this is what open is in the NFL. Like, that's what it's going to look like from now on.
He said 3 years of film to see that. That is stuff you can learn from watching other guys. Oh, look at when he threw it. He's already throwing it, and the guy's just coming back because he anticipated. You can see that stuff in film. And quarterbacks have made those adjustments and improved from being backups.
But it's different when it's somebody else's film and not your film. And he hasn't been in the game to see it in the game, what it looks like. He's seen it in the meeting room. I think it takes more time. We can continue this conversation, but I want to get to this super chat. Thank you very much, Fire the Great. Even bad teams with bad head coaches would at least show support against some of this stuff. I couldn't have been his teammate because I would have flipped. Spotlight equals being less than human and is probably why I'm not famous, LOL. And like, you can defend him without saying he should be the starter too. Like what I wanted to hear Kyle say is the criticism of Trey as a person is out of line. And that's what Lombardi did. Like, he's taking undeserved personal criticism. If you want to criticize his game, that's totally fair. Like, you and I have done that and we can disagree about that, but him as a person, that to me, it's different.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you start talking about anybody's mother in any scenario, it's personal. And if you're being critical of that person, you can talk about somebody's mother and say, wow, his mother really raised him right. That's okay. But if you're being critical and you bring the mother into it, now you're kind of crossing a line. And that's the whole problem.
Out of this, right?
Leave people's family out of this. Like, just don't bring up people's family. Unless it's like Nick Bosa and his brother plays in the NFL, you shouldn't be bringing up family.
Nick Eller, shout out to Nick, YouTube channel member, big supporter. By the way, become a channel member for less than $3 a month. You get custom emojis, membership badges, and priority comment response. Levin's pretty spot on today. Yeah, it's a different, it's a welcome change for you.
I was going to say, how's this different than any other day?
but let's get into the second part of that because it pertains to the game this weekend, right? He's got another opportunity. He's going to play, I think, the second half of this game. And I agree with what you said. And it's something that I wrote about for our website, goldstandardniners.com. Trey's he's got to just chuck it because he's got nothing to lose at this point because what he's been doing hasn't been working. So even if you don't think the guy is totally open, screw it, Trey. Let her rip. And that's literally what Kyle Shanahan told him this week. He said, I want to see more aggressive throws from Trey.
Now, see, this is where I differ from Michelle. Michelle's out on Trey. I still think if Trey were to get to play, a lot of these issues would work themselves out, and he would eventually get to the point of being the franchise quarterback. I still think that has a high probability. I still believe Trey Lance has the ability to be a franchise quarterback. I'm not out saying this guy will never be it, but you have to look at the situation fairly, and the situation is Brock Purdy has shown he's ready now, and I haven't seen the progress from Trey Lance that I wanted. So it's less likely, I think, that he can progress. It's not that, oh, he's good now, and I think he could get great. It's, wow, he's got a long way to go. Maybe he gets there, maybe he doesn't, right? So Brock Purdy deserves the chance to be the starter for this team. That's where I've changed. It's no longer I prefer to see Trey Lance, and then if he doesn't pan out, it's Brock Purdy. It's Brock Purdy deserves the chance, and if he doesn't pan out, they better freaking go to Trey Lance and not Sam Darnold. That's where I have changed. That's where my opinion is altered. And I think you have to constantly adapt and adjust to new info. And the new info here is Trey Lance isn't as far along as we thought. But I will be curious to see how he does in the second preseason game, assuming he gets the opportunity. If Sam Darnold plays the entire first half and then Trey Lance comes in, even if he lights it up, people are going to go, well, yeah, it's the second half of a preseason game. Which, by the way, pay attention to the people that say that and go back and look at what they were saying about Sam Darnold after the first preseason game. Because if they don't match, then there's a bias there for one reason or another. But I did want to see that if he can make that adjustment, because maybe this was, I hate to say it, but maybe it was rust. Maybe it was, I'm coming back from injury. I'm unsure of myself. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. And he just second guessed himself. And we saw him improve drastically as the game went on. He got better and better as the game went on. So maybe he's able to pick up where he left off, which I think where he left off in that game, he was in a pretty good spot. It's just that in the beginning, he was pretty terrible. I would say in the first 3 or 4 drives, you could classify that as terrible. And then he was pretty good at the end. So can he pick up and be pretty good? Or are you going to see the same issues rear their head again?
So that's the question I have is like, what does Trey have to do to like just inspire confidence and make you feel like he was successful? Because I agree with what Steve Young said.
Hit the timing things, the timing routes.
Like he has to throw 50 touchdowns. Like if he just goes in there, like perfect example, last weekend, right? What was his stat line? 10 of 15 for 112 yards and a touchdown. Take away the touchdown. Let's just say if he goes in and is 10 of 15 again and 112 yards, and he's throwing the ball on time and things like that, I don't think that's going to be good enough for people. And I don't know if he feels like that's going to be good enough for him. I think he's in a mindset now where he's got to throw a touchdown every play, because if he doesn't do that, then he's a failure. Then it's terrible. He's not getting it. And on all this stuff, he's a bust. I feel like that's what he has to do. Otherwise, people are going to do what you're talking about. Oh, it's second string, third string, doesn't count. When all the negative stuff, any incompletion counts and is, proof that he can't play in the league.
Let's be honest here. Probably 95% of the people that are talking, whether it's Twitter, whether it's content creators, beat reporters, whatever, they have already made up their minds one way or the other. There's the people that are out on Trey Lance, and there's the people like yourself that are still pretty firmly in the Trey Lance boat, right? I think that there's a very small percentage of the people that are going back and forth, and right. And so unless he is otherworldly, you're either going to get the confirmation one way or the other, because you can skew it. If he's 10 of 15, 120 yards, and he looks good, he gets the timing routes, people like you are going to go, see, he improved. I think he has a real chance. He deserves more of an opportunity. He should have played the first half. And the people that don't believe in him, they're going to go, yeah, it was backups. Who cares? It was third stringers. He's playing in the second half of a preseason game. Anybody drafted number 3 overall should be able to do it. But if he comes out and he's like 12 of 13 for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns, there is no argument to say, well, hold on here. He was just playing against third stringers, right? Anybody saying that would lose a lot of credibility. And I don't think you're going to see you're going to see some of the fans say that, because some fans, are never going to change. But the content creators and the beat reporters, the people that actually care about their credibility, aren't going to be saying that, because it would be ludicrous to say. So the only opportunity he has to change minds is to either be otherworldly like that, or go the other way, to where, like, if he's 5 of 15 and throws 3 interceptions, you're probably going to change your mind to a certain degree on him.
What if he's 5 of 13 with 3 drop touchdowns? I don't think those drop touchdowns are going to get nearly the attention that the dropped interceptions got this week. That's what I mean. Like, there's a very narrow path for him to prove to people that he's better than what he has shown. And
this team doesn't drop passes, though. That never happens.
Yeah. I don't know about that. So I'm rooting for him. So you're going to join us on the Instant Reaction Show this week, which I'm excited about. Full disclosure, I'm going to be hosting on ESPN Radio from 7 to 10 Eastern on Saturday. So I will have the game on at ESPN, and I will be watching. And I'm literally going to fly home from Bristol, Connecticut, and hop directly onto the Instant Reaction Show. It's going
to be an interesting night, because I work all day. I get home. I get an hour with my kid. I get her to bed. I'm recording a podcast with my family, because my family does like reviews old films from like nostalgia childhood, mostly 80s, 90s things. This is one I'm recording with my siblings, because it's a movie that was like always shown in my household. So I'm recording that starting at, I think, 9 o'clock Eastern to 10 o'clock. So we're going to be both doing that. And I'm totally set it up. I'm going to have one laptop showing the game on mute while I'm recording with my family, and I'm going to be watching that, because I need to know what happened so I can instantly react to it. Now, I'm hoping I am done recording with my family by the time Trey Lance gets in.
Oh, bro.
Because if not, I'm going to be a terrible recording partner, because I'm going to not be paying attention at all to what my siblings are saying.
Well, I'm fine with that, by the way. I'm totally comfortable sacrificing your other podcast for the sake of this one.
Yes, that podcast that gets like 20 downloads an episode.
Schlemiels says, what happens if Sam Darnold balls out? To me, nothing happens. I mean, it's good for Sam. I already know what Sam Darnold is. Everybody should know what Sam Darnold is. Do we really need to see him play? And can I just say, and I was on 95.7 the game earlier today talking about this. Shouldn't Sam Darnold have looked a hell of a lot better against second and third string people than he looked? I mean, they didn't score any points. Like, what did he do that was so spectacular? He completed a couple passes. The first possession he was in, they turned it over on downs. The second one ended in a fumble, which of course isn't Sam's fault. Shame on him for throwing to Cameron Latu. The third one ended in a missed 58-yard field goal, so they couldn't get any closer than that. Like, shouldn't Sam Darnold have looked way better than he did to justify that he's the back quarterback over Trey Lance?
Here's the thing about Sam Darnold. If Sam Darnold comes in and balls out, okay, we've seen him do that in real NFL games. That's not his issue. His issue is consistency.
Right.
Yes, he has very high level capabilities, and that has come through in a handful of games in his career. The problem is normally he follows that up sometime in the next couple of weeks with a stinker like his last start in Carolina when he was, what was it, like 5 of 17 with 2 or 3 picks. You know, he's somebody that's not consistent, and that's the whole problem with him. Now, I have argued, and I think you are way too far out on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is somebody that you want as a backup because you want, as a backup, somebody that can come in and maybe give you that high level. You know, you can't expect a backup to come in and do it week in, week out. Nobody has that backup in the NFL. But he could come in and save the day for 2, 3, maybe even a 4-game stretch, be serviceable, be good enough. That's all you can ask for as a backup. I do think he's a good backup in the NFL. I just think that if something happens to Brock Purdy, you better be seeing what you have in Trey Lance.
So here's Sam Darnold's magical 6 games. And I literally have this as a Word document on my computer.
I can tell.
Can go and look. It's not been good. And the game you're talking about, the Saints game, the last one, 5 of 15 for 43 yards in the game. With 2 picks and 2 fumbles.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets credit for that. Sam, can you imagine if Trey Lance was 5 of 15 for 43 yards with 2 picks? Can you imagine? Like, he's never had a game like that. And to me, that guy can't be your backup quarterback because you want a high floor. And Sam Darnold is a high variance guy. So that's not a backup quarterback. That's not what you want. What you want is a Brock Purdy style player, right? Guy that can come in cold, have success quickly, not afraid to let it rip when he sees it and trust the system, and a guy that can instill confidence in the team. That's the kind of guy you want.
What you're describing is a starter. That's my issue. Yeah, ideally you have Brock Purdy as a backup because that means you have an elite quarterback as a starter. Like, Brock Purdy is not a backup quarterback from what we saw, right? So you can't expect that to be your backup. Backups in the NFL are awful. Chase Daniel had a 10-plus year career and got paid decent money throughout that career because he was somebody that was smart, could help in film review, and if he came in, he wasn't going to shit the bed. That's what most teams find is acceptable as their backup quarterback. You know, Cooper Rush is glorified. Cooper Rush is glorified for what he did in Dallas, right? He didn't do anything special. He came in and he didn't destroy the team. He didn't throw a bunch of interceptions, right? So, yeah, you can prefer that as your backup. Somebody that's going to come in and just not destroy everything because they want to be the hero, right? I would rather have the guy that could come in and actually have a chance of making that big play, leading a comeback or whatever. I would rather take the variance than I know I'm not getting anything special. I'm just not going to get the turnover either.
To me, all you want your backup quarterback to do is protect the ball. Sam Darnold will burn the forest down, and he'll be the one that starts the fire. That's the problem. And yeah, he can play well.
Sam Darnold behind this offensive line does worry me. Like, this offensive line, you can say, well, the starters will be better. That's true, but the Niners have never been anywhere great at pass blocking in Kyle Shanahan's tenure. Part of his system does lead your quarterback to get hit, and JT O'Sullivan also broke that down. If you remember that video where he dressed up like Kyle Shanahan, pretended to be Kyle Shanahan. And the point was, yeah, Kyle does put his quarterback in harm's way a little bit more than the average system. But quarterbacks like Sam Darnold fumble the ball all the time. So that worries me. him specifically being a backup behind a bad pass blocking offensive line worries the crap out of me. So I'll give you that.
I mean, again, all this stuff worries you. Like, I feel like we've talked about this a lot. It's very, very frustrating.
We can move on to this weekend.
Trey has to walk on water just to get the backup spot. Anything less, they'll put him third string. I think they already have their minds made up. Exactly, Chris. Yeah. Exactly. He has to walk on water to even have a shot. And he knows this. Every throw, every drop back, every incompletion. You know, if I were him, I would have been super pissed at Jordan Mason for dropping that screen pass.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure Trey has that in his mind every single snap. And you can't tell me that doesn't screw with a guy. You can't tell me that. And you can't say, well, he should just block it out and overcome it. And like, these guys aren't robots. It's not, you can't just say that. Like, these people are human beings. They have human emotions. And that's where I think we are right now. And if he doesn't walk on water against the Chargers, I think people are just going to continue to say the same things about him again and again and again.
Here's my thing that I think 100%. If Kyle Shanahan has Trey Lance as number 3, if that's where he's at with Trey Lance, and we're going into the season, move Trey Lance. Doesn't matter what you get, even if you can't get anything. You got to move him because you're getting him off your books for next year so that you don't have any more of the dead cap hit next year, right? Go ahead and move him. If he's number 3 behind Sam Darnold, there's zero reason for him to remain on this roster. Zero. Because you're not going to turn to him if Brock Purdy goes down if he's number 3. So you might as well, even if it's no value at all, the value, if you can't get even like a 5th round pick for him, the value of moving him for nothing is that he's off your books next year when his cap hit goes up to actually a pretty decent number, right?
The problem is, and it's the same problem they ran into with Jimmy Garoppolo last year, you can't
Nobody
depend
wants
on Darnold to stay healthy. Darnold's never played a full season in his career. So that when your backup guy, your safety valve is unreliable, then you do need a good third string quarter. And that's literally exactly what they ran into last year because Trey got hurt and Mr. Never Stays Healthy, Jimmy Garoppolo, didn't stay healthy. And Sam Darnold has been the exact same way in his career. He has never played a full season. So you do need a good third string quarterback. And I don't know, did you see the article from Kawakami that said if they could get a conditional 4th for Trey, they would take it in a second?
I don't know if that's true or not. Like, that could very well be true. It also sounds really low to me, but that's me. This team does seem to be completely out on. I do want to put this out there since we were talking about Raheem Mostert. It does raise your eyebrows of what happens if Tua gets another concussion. You have Mike McDaniel, which was part of the team when they decided Trey Lance was worth the number 3 overall pick. And you have Raheem Mostert, who's a former teammate who came to Trey Lance's defense. So clearly he's somebody that Raheem Mostert likes, right? And there's also Jeff Wilson. I don't know what Jeff Wilson's opinion is, but you at least would have, a coach that has some familiarity with him already, a similar system. Mike McDaniel, I think, has broken that system a little bit, broken away from that system a little bit more than the other understudies of the Kyle Shanahan and McVay people, but it's a similar system. And then you have teammates that are already going to, if he's traded for, come in and say, hey, this guy deserves a chance, and have his back to kind of help him step into the leadership role if something were to happen to Tua. That was part of what I thought when I saw Mostert come to his defense. It was like, that definitely makes Miami the most likely destination if it takes a Tua injury, I think, for that to happen, though.
Well, concussion specifically, because he's had so many.
If he gets a concussion, the Dolphins should tell him, we're not playing you ever again.
Well, the problem is that, he may retire. He said it himself that he talked about retirement. So maybe the plan for the Dolphins is like, we have Mike White here. So Mike White will be the quarterback this year. But if we trade for Trey, give him a whole year to learn our system, and then maybe we try and go forward with Trey Lance as our franchise quarterback.
You don't trade for Trey Lance and say, we're going to sit him again. No, if you trade for Trey Lance, you're playing him. You might give him a couple weeks to get up to speed, but you're playing him.
I disagree. I think they would do the complete opposite.
You're playing him because if he craps the bed, that going into the offseason, I got to find a quarterback. You're not going to sit and wait and go, well, I hope Trey Lance is the real deal because we don't have anything else the following season. That is a team that expects to be able to compete for a Super Bowl. So they're going to want to find out right away. I don't think they're at that level quite yet, but they're going to want to find out right away if something happens to Tua to where they know Tua is no longer going to be around.
Well, if that's your philosophy, then you're making the same mistake the 49ers made. If you think I'm going to trade for Trey Lance during training camp or maybe during the season, he's going to have to learn a system that's different than the system he's learned during the year, come in and play. And if he doesn't show out, then we're out on him. Then you're doing the exact same problem the 49ers did. So I disagree. If I were Miami, if I was going to make that move, I would sit him for another year. Again, he's younger than literally 9 rookies on the 49ers. So it's not like he, have to worry about his age. So that's what I would do. But anyway, that's a Dolphin problem. That's not a 49ers problem. Other stuff I want to see this weekend. I want to see more Ronnie Bell, man. He looked good as a receiver. He looked good. I loved it. I think that I could be convinced that he should be the third down receiver over Juwan Jennings. I could be convinced. I need to see more consistency.
I was going to say, we got to know whether or not it's going to be consistent.
Yeah. But
we also got to know, here's the thing that Juwan Johnson has, that Michelle constantly overlooks when she criticizes him. His run blocking. Yeah. Yes. That you can say, well, wide receiver run blocking shouldn't be important. It is in this system. We know that. And the problem is if you only bring him in on third down when he's money for receiving, then teams know, right? So you got to play him on first and second down when, 1, you get the value of his run blocking. 2, you're not tipping your hand constantly, right? And you can't just have him in, oh, he's so great as a run blocker, but not good as a receiver, like Michelle likes to talk about. But you can't just play him on first and second down because the teams know, okay, they're running because he's in, right? You can't tip your hand. So that's why he plays as much as he does. It's because of his run blocking. Now, if you get somebody that can actually be a difference maker as a receiver, I think Johnson's going to take a step back. He's not going to be the number 3. The problem is they haven't had another guy there that can be a difference maker consistently as a receiver. Ronnie Bell looks like he could potentially be that. I had him, I wrote the article about, who rose and who stock up, stock down. I had him in the stock up, but then he had that drop that led to the interception. And it's like, he's still stock up sort of, but there was enough negatives there. I was actually going to have him as stock up as a wide receiver, stock down as a returner because he wasn't making good decisions as the returner. He was catching the ball even with a guy 1 yard in his face. That's playing with fire. He should not be a returner.
I totally agree. Steven Duckett says Jennings, not Johnson. I know you know his name. Yeah. You just happen to say Johnson. Like, let's calm down here.
It's because going back to Purdue had an All-American basketball player about 10 years ago. That was Juwan Johnson.
No one
His name was Juwan Johnson. So those two constantly get messed up in my head.
Chris Maldonado says, I want to see Bosa get signed. Yes, Chris. We all want to see Nick Bosa get signed.
I think it will happen, not this week, but next week. I think after the second preseason game, they're going to want to get him signed so that he gets 2 weeks to get up to speed. Not that he'll play in the third preseason. I don't think he would, but
we'll get back to the Broncos game in a minute. But just on the Bosa thing, it all comes down to the deadline. And I think the Niners and Bosa probably look as week 1 as the deadline. I think they probably think if he signs a week before we have to play, we're good. We're fine. So week 1 is the deadline. And that's what's going to spur action because that's what always happens in these contract negotiations. Nobody wants to back down. Everybody's going to puff out their chest. And until the deadline actually comes, and then it's like, there are consequences if we don't compromise, then nobody compromises. So I think that they will. I know some people are like freaking out about it. Like, I'm not there yet. They will. It's frustrating as all hell because this should have been done by now. But
yeah, the Niners are, if they're digging in on anything, they're stupid. Pay him what he wants. Like, you don't have a choice. But one of the things I want to see is the linebackers. That is the big undecided position, I would say, at this point on the team. Who's that third linebacker? And I mean, I don't think it's any big surprise. I would be rooting for Jalen Graham. I didn't think he had a true chance until we saw him in the preseason, but he's a Purdue guy, so that's my preference. But I do want to see, so I was watching that on defensive snaps because I didn't really care what happened on the defensive line. I was watching the linebackers to see how well they filled the lanes and were able to avoid the blockers while still filling a lane. And I didn't see it very good from McCrary Ball, and I didn't see it very good from D. Winters. I didn't see them filling lanes very well. They were filling the lanes, but they were just going right at the blocker. And so then they would get occupied and the run game would get blocked as the offense wanted. It's like, yeah, you got to fill that lane, but you also got to avoid the blocker. You don't just run right at him and go, oh, I got in the lane. No, because they're going to push you out. if you do that. And what I saw from Jalen Graham is he was filling lanes, but he was purposely avoiding, going underneath, going to the side, trying to get away from the blockers, not just running right at them.
Yeah. And I would like to see somebody step up. I mean, Niners generally been pretty good about finding linebackers. Dre Greenlaw, 5th round pick, one, fantastic player. Azeez Al-Shire, fantastic player. Like, they've generally been okay with this. Johnny Holland seems to know what he likes. So all you need for the Niners is one of Jalen Graham or D Winters to be good. Not even great, just solid. Just one of those guys. Just hit 50%, Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that one of those guys could be a solid player for them this year.
I will be curious to see if we see it at all. Like, let's say none of these guys were really great and none of them truly stepped up. Do we get a little bit of a wrinkle where they take a defensive end, maybe Cleveland Farrell's capable of doing it, maybe Drake Jackson's capable of doing it, stand him up and make him a linebacker who blitzes a lot, but is capable of dropping into a kind of a simple underneath coverage a few times to keep the defense being honest, right? I think we could see that wrinkle where we have a defensive end come in and be standing up on an early rundown, because that gives you basically a second big body as long as they're capable of filling a lane, which I think those guys are quick enough, athletic enough to be able to do that. It's just whether or not they have any skills whatsoever in coverage to be able to do a simple kind of zone spot underneath.
I'm all for it, man. Do it. Mix. Now's the time, right? Let's try some shit. Let's see it, especially from the defensive perspective. A lot of people are saying Danny Gray is a kick returner. Just because you're fast doesn't necessarily mean you're good at it, and he doesn't have a ton of experience at it. That's the problem. And first and foremost, you need a guy back there that can just catch the damn ball consistently. Like, I never, ever, ever want to have to worry about a guy catching the football. And if you don't have a ton of experience, it's not easy to do. It's freaking hard.
Yeah. Punt returner is much harder because, one, they're harder to catch.
Yeah.
And two, you got to be able to read where the guys are at. Whereas a kick return, you're never going to have a guy right in your face when you're catching it. The guy I would like to see as a kick returner, I don't know that I would trust him as a punt returner. Like I said, that's a completely different ball game that you have no idea what they're capable of doing. But I would love to see Eli Mitchell as a kick returner, because what is kick returning? You need speed, you need quickness, and you need ball carrier vision. You got to be able to see where the lanes are going to be. Well, he's a running back. Would he be good in that role? I think he could be an answer as a kick returner.
I think he'd get hurt immediately.
Well, that's the rub. But he has all the speed and quickness that you want as a kick returner, and he's shown a pretty good ball carrier vision and a willingness to see it and hit it, right? And that's what you want as a kick returner.
Walton 101 says, does Danny Gray actually exist? I've yet to see much compelling evidence. It's outstanding work by Walton. By the way, I'm on Twitch at Stats on Fire. Feel free to follow me there as well. The kick return thing is going to be, they got to settle it. And Deshaun Jameson looked good in week 1. I really like what I saw from him. Now I'd like to see him get a chance to return a kick and have it actually count where somebody doesn't hold somebody. But I'll be keeping my eye on that. The linebackers thing I think is legit. I'd like to see a little more Taya Davis-Price. I need to know if that's real. He looked good. And with running backs, I'm a lot quicker to declare a guy like somebody that can be an actual player than I am with quarterbacks. I think it's a far less complicated position. And he looked really good, so I like that. I like to see somebody on the backup offensive line look good. Somebody, whether it's, Zakel, Jason Poe, anybody, please, somebody look good so that I can have.
I want to see progress. And I think we should have a caveat here a little bit for, how bad that preseason went. It certainly seemed like, and we've seen it reported now, that the Raiders did game planning for that game, which to me is kind of dirty. Crazy. You don't game plan for preseason, you prick. I think that was a McDaniels being McDaniels. He wanted to stick it to Kyle Shanahan.
Oh, I don't think he wanted to stick it to Kyle. I think he's like, I've been getting my ass kicked here. I need to look good. I need some positivity.
I would bet that there's a little bit. Josh McDaniels was seen as, the young, great offensive guy, and then he pulled out of that Colts position, being the head coach, and he kind of fell to the wayside. And now it's been Kyle Shanahan and all of Kyle Shanahan's understudies that have taken that young offensive, savant. And I think there's a little bit of a rub there. Plus, I don't think there's a lot of love between the Raiders and Niners. And I do wonder if that played a role too. And maybe Mark Davis said, hey, stick it to him.
I don't know. I mean, do you agree to joint practices with somebody if you want to stick it? Maybe you do. I don't know. Who
I mean,
knows?
that is the question mark, because the Niners got, from what we saw every report, the Niners got worked in those.
Yeah, it's true. That's really funny. If Greg Papa, I think, is the one that said that the Raiders game planned for the game, which is like, certainly Greg Papa has Raiders sources, right? He called
Right.
Raiders games for years. So that may be one area where I actually trust what he says. Now, when he says that Sam Darnold's going to challenge Brock Purdy for QB1, that's where I get off the train at that point. But for this specific thing, when it comes to the Raiders and him having knowledge of what they may or may not have been doing, yeah, I do believe it.
Yep. Well, we're going to see how they respond. If the Niners look as crappy, even without starters again in this preseason, I know it's preseason, but getting worked in the joint practices and then worked in back-to-back preseason games, I'm going to start sounding that alarm a little bit of, is this team going to have another slow-ass start? Is Kyle Shanahan not going to have this team ready again? Like, are you guys going to take it for granted? Oh, we're going to be back in the NFC Championship game to take it to the Eagles this time. Don't take it for granted. Come out and actually win some games. Treat it like 2019.
Did you watch the brick by brick that came out that the 49ers put out, the first episode?
I didn't know they did, but I've been working every day, so I could have missed it.
So they came out with Brick by Brick. It's their little behind the scenes series.
Right.
I don't think there's much that can be gained from watching it because it's heavily
edited. Yeah.
Heavily edited, but they did show a clip of the meeting with Kyle Shanahan. And one thing that I loved is he told the team, I think we can be great, but right now we're not shit, he said. And we have to go out and actually be great. We're at the bottom of the mountain. So hopefully that is the message that he's sending to them. I'd like to see at least some of the starters play in this game, just like a series, just something. Right. Especially Brock, we don't know. I really want to see Brock play. Be fair to Brock. Put him in a situation where he doesn't have to come in cold against the Steelers.
Here's the thing. There's only 6 days between this preseason game and the next one. So I think that's part of why we won't see starters in this one. Maybe one or two of the lesser people. I would like to see McKivitz, get him some more experience, right? But I think with this only being 6 days between, and they want to treat that third game as the true rehearsal, because after that you have 13 days off.
I hate that.
I hate the schedule of the preseason. Don't only have 3 games, have 2 weeks between the last one and the regular season, but then have number 2 and number 3 be a short week. No, have number 1 to 2 maybe be a short week, so then your starters can play 2, have a normal week's off to play in number 3. I think the way it's set up, it is set up in a way where teams are feeling like we can't play our starters until week 3.
How about the fact that, and this is just my personal thing, the Chargers game, the third week of the preseason, starts at 10 p.m. Eastern. That's going to kill me. I'm going to go to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sorry, that's just my selfish thing. But anyway, is there anything else you want to see? Did you see that Ambry Thomas was working with the ones outside in practice, and they moved Lenore to the slot? I don't know what the hell Isaiah Oliver has been doing in practice, and I know he didn't look great in the game, but damn, Kyle flat out said, he ain't guaranteed to be the starter, and he's their big free agent acquisition other than Javon Hargrave that they brought in.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't look good. I did see that they might be doing what some of the teams have done in the past. I think the Niners did it about 15 years ago. Matt Barrows put that out there, where you have your outside guy, right, which will be Lenore as the technical starter. But when you do go nickel and you need that slot corner, Lenore comes inside and Thomas goes outside. So Thomas is kind of a starter, kind of not, depends on what they're in. But that I could see happening, that if Lenore is your best slot and everybody else has been untrustworthy there, you got to put him in the slot when you need it. But he's also your second best outside corner after Mooney Ward. So when you're not running nickel and you only have 2 corners out there, you would want Lenore on the outside. That's something I could see happening.
And Michelle is actually the one that pointed this out to me last year. The Niners got cooked on slot fades last year repeatedly. It was again and again and again. And I'm sure the Niners are aware of this. So that's obviously something that they need to get fixed.
Well, that's why they signed Oliver. It's just, like you said, I don't know what's going on with Oliver. I don't know if it's something where like he got a deal, so he thinks I got my spot secured, and he, didn't come in prepared, or what's going on with him. Maybe he's got a little bit of a stinger that hasn't been reported. We've seen that in the past too.
The 49ers not being totally truthful with injuries? I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
Yeah.
There was one other comment here on Trey Lance that I wanted to get to that was a little bit older, but I didn't get to it. Fire the Great again says, Lance just needs to get the feel. Look at Deshaun Watson. He went from arguably a top 5 quarterback to a year and a half off, came back and looked like a bottom of the NFL quarterback. That's true.
Did you see the retweet about Deshaun Watson today?
He's looked awful, right?
They have not scored a touchdown in 11 on 11s with him as the quarterback, but they've scored him when he's not the quarterback. Let's just say Deshaun Watson is on my do not draft list. I don't care where he's at. I'm not drafting him in fantasy for, even if he didn't have all the off-field stuff, he would be somebody that I would not want to draft because he didn't look good last year, and reports are he's ruined. Reports. Thank God that's not our problem. Can you imagine if that's what we had to talk about?
Fully guaranteed contract for Deshaun Watson too. But the point that I want to take away from this comment is, even if you're great, time away can really have an effect on you and impact you. It's like you don't just come back and automatically pick up, where you left off. And so, again, I know people are very impatient with Trey, and he's had 3 years and all this stuff. And I do think that the fact that it's been such a hurry up and wait, start and stop kind of thing has eroded people's willingness to be patient with Trey Lance. But, and look, Michelle says I have blinders on, and maybe I do. Okay. I just am not ready to bail on this guy after 4 freaking starts. Johnny Manziel got twice as many starts. He didn't watch a second of film. Okay. Jamarcus Russell, the biggest bust in history, right? Got 6 times as many starts as Trey Lance. And Sam freaking Darnold, who's ahead of him right now in the depth chart, got 13 times more starts than Trey Lance. So I'm just not ready to say that we know that he can't do it.
Look, I've said it before on this show. I'm not out on Trey Lance. I'm not done with him, but I am disappointed with how far along he is. You can learn when you're the backup. There are things you can improve on that. I didn't see anything in that preseason game that didn't look like a rookie. And that's disappointing.
He changed his throwing motion and is a more accurate passer. I mean, we're not giving him any credit for that. Steve Young said on KNBR that Trey's a better player than he was, that he gave him credit for going this offseason and working on stuff that he's not good at, and that a lot of guys don't do that. A lot of guys only work on the stuff that they are good at. He doesn't get any credit. No one even talked about that the fact that all the mechanical changes that he's made actually look like they stuck in the game, which is very rare.
But let's see. We got to know more on whether or not he's actually more accurate, right? One preseason game is not going to prove that.
Let it rip, Trey. Get in there.
That's literally, which is ironic because that's what everybody says he does. He's willing to let it rip deep a lot more than anybody else. Well, we didn't see that. Now, granted, I think the offensive line play was so bad that they didn't call too many deep shots opportunities because they knew the offensive line wasn't going to hold up.
The other thing, though, with that, and I think you saw it with Darnold, sometimes you don't always need to take, a 7-step drop before you unleash a deep pass. If you're reading pre-snap, like this guy's going to be open, and I think that's what Darnold did. Credit. I think he looked and he was like, yep, this route's going to be open. And he just dropped back. I think he took 3 steps and let it fly. Right. I actually went back last night and watched the Lance touchdown to Danny Gray against the Packers. He does the exact same thing. It's like a 3-step drop, or maybe not 3, maybe it's 5, but he's quick. Like he just lets it go because that's where he's, thinks that the matchup is going to be successful. Jed watching says, Stats, you say you don't want to bail on Trey. So what's the solution? Would you pick up his 5th-year option because he can't start? I'm not sure how Trey ever works for us. That's why I want him to play this year. So you find out what to do next year, because they're going to run into that situation where it's like, we don't know what the heck is going on. And look, maybe he gets an opportunity to play this year because guys get hurt. We don't know. But that's why I want the information. I really want the information. And I don't think that this whole Super Bowl window thing, I think that's a handy excuse to do whatever you want, basically. Super Bowl window, we can't play Trey Lance. Okay, but you didn't sign any of the veteran pass rushers that are out there. Why not? You're in a Super Bowl window. Super Bowl window, but we have Colton McKivitz as our starting right tackle, a guy that we ourselves said wasn't good enough to make this team. Like they let him go. Now he's back. But it's a Super Bowl window, right? So it's like You can't have it both ways.
I mean, some of us knew at the time, cough you and me, but in retrospect, it is 100% clear Trey Lance's time to play was 2021, his rookie year. And
Yep.
Kyle Shanahan caved to veterans who were 100% in the wrong, who should have been told, shut the hell up and play. You're being dead wrong here. You're showing allegiance to a player rather than the team. That was the opportunity there. And I think Kyle Shanahan was doing that. That's why Trey Lance was in there. He was giving him some confidence, giving him some gimmies so that they could move to him later in the season as he continued to progress and the veterans put an end to it. And that's the mistake that Kyle Shanahan did. He didn't put them in their place. He listened to them.
Terrible. He wasn't a leader. Leaders do things that are unpopular because they're for the betterment of the group. And Kyle didn't do that. And let's be honest, they started 2-3 that year, 2-4, really. So they had justification for making a switch if they wanted to, but they didn't. William Bonnet says 8-9 record this year. Too many questions, too tough of a schedule. Pittsburgh, Giants, Dallas, Cleveland, Cincy, Baltimore, Seattle, Jacksonville, Philly, all losses. Those are all playoff teams. Wrong? I don't think they're losing to the Giants. If you lose to the freaking Giants, keep in mind the 49ers had the best record against playoff teams last year in the league. They were 4-1 against playoff teams. The only playoff team they lost to was the Chiefs, who won the damn Super Bowl. So, Pittsburgh, it's going to be tough, but the Niners are the favorite in that game for a reason. They should not lose to the Giants. They have kicked the tar out of the Cowboys when they've played them, so I don't know why you would be worried about that one. Cleveland, I got to see it before I believe it. Cincinnati is going to be tough. Baltimore will be tough. Seattle, I'm still in the see it before I believe it boat, considering they beat their ass 3 times last year. Jacksonville's going to be tough, and Philly is going to be very tough. So I don't automatically chuck those up to all losses for the Niners.
I think 8-9 is probably the low. That's the worst case scenario. I could see the Niners falling to 8-9, and the way that happens is Brock Purdy is terrible, throws a bunch of interceptions, and Kyle Shanahan remains alone and stubborn and refuses to replace him, or replaces them with Sam Darnold, who's just as bad or worse, right? So I think that's the low. If all of the quarterback stuff breaks bad, they would be 8-9. Now, I think they're very likely to win minimum 10 games, and depending on what Brock Purdy is, they could win as many as 13, maybe even 14. If Brock Purdy looks as good or even improved a little bit from last year, they're winning 13, 14 games. But he's probably going to be somewhere in the middle to where he's Jimmy Garoppolo, who can get out of a sack or two a game, right? And in that scenario, they probably win 11, 12 games.
Yeah. The other thing with Brock, too, is that I feel like we got to be prepared for him to have a worse year than last year. Not a bad year, a worse year than last year, because he threw at least 2 touchdowns in every regular season start last year. You can go look at Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't throw 2 touchdowns every week, so we have to brace ourselves for that, too. And that doesn't mean that the Niners would lose those games, by the way. I'm just saying, expecting 2 touchdowns a week from Brock Purdy is not fair to Brock Purdy.
Right. 2 touchdowns a game is 34 touchdowns in a season. That shouldn't be the expectation. That should be the hope, right? The hope for me with Brock Purdy is he has 30-plus touchdowns. If he has 30-plus touchdowns, I can live with 17 interceptions, right? I wouldn't want to see it.
What about 12? Can we put it down in that area?
30 and 12 is way, really, really good. That's the best season since Steve Young was the quarterback. Now, I'm not saying what I hope for. I'm saying I hope for 30 touchdowns. The interceptions are going to be what they are going to be. Obviously, I hope for a lot less than 17. But if he throws 30 touchdowns, I can live with him throwing an interception a game.
Yes. I mean, the bigger, more big, impactful plays you make, the more mistakes you can make. That was why we got so frustrated with Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah, he turned the ball over, but he never made the big plays to make up for it. Right. That was the frustrating thing. Mr. Blue Magic 23, 10-7 this year. Strength of schedule, travel, injuries, slow start as always. The schedule it's tough for the Niners. They got a big rest disadvantage that they didn't have last year. It's not going to be as easy for the Niners. And they did lose some depth too. So,
And I think they have perhaps a worst case scenario week 1 matchup. Going to the East Coast, Eastern time zone against maybe the best pass rush in the entire league.
How encouraged will you be, though? If they hold up? whether it's the line playing better than we think or Brock evading guys. Like, if they go in there and hold up, you're like, damn, if they could do that against the Steelers, like, we'll be okay.
Let's be clear. The offensive line will not hold up against that defensive line because no offensive line is holding up against that defensive line. That defensive line is ridiculous with TJ Watt. I know Philly had the, 70 sacks last year, but they lost Hargrave, and TJ Watt was out for a large majority of the season. They I can't remember his name. They just signed him to a big extension. I think he had like 9.5 sacks last year. Right. And then they have another young guy that is supposedly doing extremely well in pass rush in camp that I've been seeing reports on. That defensive line is ridiculous, and the offensive line will not hold up. Now, maybe Brock Purdy can work his magic and get out of some of those sacks, but it's not going to be the offensive line blocking. It's not that I'm down on the offensive line. Let's be clear. I'm not saying there's no way the crappy offensive line of the Niners can hold up. I'm saying no offensive line is holding up against that pass rush.
They are coming for poor William Bonnet in the chat. And I apologize if it's Bonnet, I'm saying your name wrong. Forgive me. He says it's not unrealistic. 9-8 sophomore quarterback, loss of a lot of depth. And if it's close games, we have a rookie kicker. 10-7 could swing to 8 or 9 easily. Hope not. The rookie kicker thing is real. And by the way, shame on us for not mentioning Jake Moody and what we want to see. Because, dude, I got to see it in the game. In practice, he was killing it. He was 5 of 6 the other day. He made one kick from 59, one kick from 58, and he missed one from 61 was his only miss. Like, that's great, but I got to see you do it in games. And I'm not saying he can't, and I'm not freaking out over because he missed 2 kicks in the first preseason game. But if he misses all his kicks or a bunch of kicks in this week, then I will be a little scared. Not going to lie.
It was my big question mark with him. I brought it up at draft time with you. He had a terrible kick percentage on the road in college. He made 89, I think, % of his kicks at Michigan at home. He only made 69 or 68% of his kicks on the road. Now, what happens on the road? There's more pressure. You don't have the crowd supporting you, right? It's harder to kick there. So I think on the road is a better simulation for kicking than the NFL when stakes are higher. Actual money is on the line. People's careers are on the line, right? If he might be one of these guys that's great in practice, but when the pressure's on, he wilts. And if that's the case, and then we could be looking for a kicker at week 5, 6.
Robbie Gould.
That is a possibility. I don't think there's any way they're cutting him, right? They're going to see what he can do in actual games, especially with him doing well in practice. But if he is shanking stuff in 2, 3, 4 games in, they're going to go to that free agent.
Yep. I agree. They're not going to cut him before the season begins unless he is absolutely horrible, but I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah.
And he wouldn't be the first one. Like Daniel Carlson's one of the best kickers in the league right now. He got something off and he was absolutely horrendous. I think it was with Minnesota, and they had to cut him. And then he went down to Oakland and turned his career around. Or is it the other way? Was it that he was in Oakland, then he went to, I can't remember how it started out, but he had a streak where he missed something like 6 straight field goals. And then they had to move on from him. And then the next place he went, he was suddenly great because he got to reset.
Yeah, he started with Minnesota. And he was 1 of 4 in 2 games with Minnesota, and they cut him. And then he went to Oakland and was 16 of 17.
Yeah. Same season, right?
Yeah, in the same year.
Same year, right? That is a distinct possibility that Moody could miss some more kicks, and now he's really starting to get into the mental stuff, and there's nothing the team can do to help him because until he can get released and reset, he's never going to be able to get out of it. It is a very big mental thing. It's like golf. Kicking is golf.
Carlson has made 88% of his field goals in his career. So you're telling me a guy could struggle early and the team could let go of him too soon and he could go to another team and have success?
I mean, they could also hold on to him and he gets out of it. Janikowski, the highest drafted kicker of all time, he only made like 60% of his kicks as a rookie, but they stuck with him and he turned it all around. He ended up, I think he's 4th all time in field goals made.
He played 18 years in the league.
Well, yeah, but people like Morton Anderson played like 24 years.
Yeah. Okay, so now you got me curious about kickers. So I'm scrolling. You know what? We don't need to do this. This podcast not afterwards. Anyway, Thank you, everybody, so much for all the people in the chat, all the questions and comments and donations. We really, really appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, become a YouTube channel member. It's less than $3 a month. Levin, I'm going to talk to you again on Saturday night. Hopefully, we're talking about Trey Lance looking good. God damn it.
You're also going to talk to me on Sunday morning because it's going to be after midnight on the East Coast.
Well, hope everybody joins us for the instant reaction shows. They're a ton of fun. We love having everybody back after week 1. Again, we like those to be as interactive as possible. So please, please, please join us. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.